You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. And now for a look at news-making international headlines this Friday, 6th May.
Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief
A third operation is underway to evacuate civilians from Ukrainian port city of Mariupol and the besieged Azovstal steel plant, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Thursday the 5th of May, as Russia accused the West of waging an economic world war. The United Nations and International Committee of the Red Cross has so far helped nearly 500 civilians flee the area during the two operations in the past week. At the briefing to the UN Secretary Council, Guterres declined to give details on the new operation to avoid undermining possible success. I hope that his continued cooperation with Moscow and Kyiv will lead to more humanitarian pauses to allow civilian safe passage from the fighting and the aid to reach those in critical need, he told the 15-member council. We must continue to do all we can to get people out of these hellscapes. Guterres has also warned that if the war in Ukraine was putting even more pressure on the developing world. He told the Security Council he was ready to facilitate talks on regulating Ukraine's agricultural production and the food and fertilizer production of Russia and Belarus world markets despite the war. UN Human Relief Chief Michelle Blanchett told the Security Council that for the 5 weeks from the late February in areas around Kyiv, Russian forces targeted male civilians who were considered suspicious. Russia has denied attacking civilians. Men were detained, beaten, summarily executed, and in some cases taken to Belarus and Russia unbeknownst to their families and held in pre-trial detention facilities, she said. Since Russia invaded neighbouring Ukraine on February the 24th in what Moscow calls a special military operation, the United States and Western allies have hit back through tough sanctions. If it is as if you were eagerly awaiting this moment to unleash prescription against Russia, Russia's UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia told the Council. If we were to talk about world war, then without a doubt it's being waged at economic level today. US Ambassador to United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield accused Russia of lying to the Security Council. Russia alone started this war and Russia alone can end it. Silence the guns, withdraw from Ukraine territory and embrace diplomacy, she said.
At least 3 people were killed in what police suspect was a Palestinian attack in the central cities of Eilat on Thursday. Police investigators and ambulance were at the scenes of attacks on Thursday night, and helicopter flew overhead. Witnesses and emergency responders said the attacker used axe. Police set up roadblocks to try to catch the assailant who fled the scenes about 15 kilometers from Tel Aviv. On television, Eilat mayors urged residents to stay indoors while security forces were still operating. Health officials said 3 people were killed and 2 others were being treated with serious slash wounds. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attacks. The official Palestinian news agency Wafa quoted him as saying, "The killing of Palestinian and Israel civilians will only lead to more deteriorations of the situation." There have been a spate of Arab street attacks in Israel in recent weeks. Prior to Eilat, Palestinians and members of Israel Arab minority had killed 15 people, including 3 police officers and a security guard, in attacks in Israel and the West Bank that have mostly targeted civilians. Israel has responded with arrest raids in Palestinian towns and villages which have often sparked clash and brought the numbers of Palestinians killed by Israel forces since the beginnings of the year to at least 40. Early on Thursday, confrontation again broke out between Palestinian and Israel police at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem Old City, though they were far more limited than clash that had erupted weekly over the past month. Jewish visitors were allowed into the area on Thursday after their entrance to the site had been suspended for the last 10 days of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Al-Aqsa Mosque in Islam's third holiest site. The compound is Judaism's holiest site and the vestige of 2 ancient Jewish temples.
CCTV cameras in Andover, Kansas have captured a tornado churning through the city. The security camera footage was taken from Andover City Hall on April 29th. It shows the tornado moving closer to the building's parking lot. A powerful low-pressure system approached Kansas, allowing a sharp dry line and a track generally along Interstate 135. Storms first developed across the central of northeast Kansas near the warm front, but at the early evenings continued. A couple of storms fired just east of Wichita. One of these storms produced a strong tornado across the east side of of Andover, causing extensive damage. This same storm produced numerous additional tornadoes as it tracked east. Residents received warnings from the National Weather Service 8 minutes before the tornado struck. Their quick response and warnings prevented more severe injuries and fatalities, says Charles Haynes, a meteorologist with the service. They sheltered in homes, they sheltered in businesses, they sought shelter at any place they possibly could to get out of harm's way, he said. No facilities were reported as a result of tornadoes, but over 1,000 buildings were damaged. Storms could continue to fire up, pushing off the northeast. The main threats were hail, damaged winds, and an isolated tornado or two.